Okay, great. I see some new faces as well coming in. Just a reminder, we're giving a couple more minutes for people to keep joining the call. In the meantime, please feel free to scan the QR code to keep in contact with us and keep learning about immersive technology in education. Hang tight and thanks for your patience. Hi, we'll just give one more minute to let some last minute joiners join the call. In the meantime, again, please feel free to scan the QR codes that you see on your screen to keep in contact with us and keep learning about immersive tech in education. Hang tight, we'll be starting in a short bit. Okay, all right. So let's kick things off. And if people are still joining, they can feel free to join as we go. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please be informed that today's webinar is being recorded. And thank you so much for joining this first segment of VERE360's VR in Education webinar series for 2021, where we try to share with all of you knowledge and insights into use of immersive technologies in the classroom. So today's session is very special as it looks into the use of VR in schools through the experience of a principal of an international primary school here in Singapore. we'd like to extend a very warm welcome to Eugene, our guest speaker and the principal of the Grange Institution. So thank you so much for joining us here today, Eugene.
Thank
But
you.
thank you. All right, but before we jump into Eugene's part of the session, we'd like to just begin by setting the scene and providing some background information on how we as VERE360 use VR in education. And then we'll close today's webinar with some time for Q&A. So if you do have questions, please hold on to them till the end of the session. All right, so let's get started then. So hi, everybody. My name is Eugene Low, and today we also have on the call Adila Saeed. We are both the co-founders of VERE360. And we are both very passionate about education. And more importantly, we deeply empathize with the struggles that teachers are facing, especially in providing experiential learning opportunities, such as lab experiments and field trips to the classrooms. All the more so now during the pandemic, where as of April 2020, 191 countries have shut down all of their primary and secondary schools, affecting almost 1.6 billion children. Through our extensive research as well, we found that teachers across the region are facing issues with experiential learning, but these issues have existed well before COVID-19 and have only been exacerbated in the last year. And these issues are primarily to do with the fact that experiential learning is typically conducted offline, making it very difficult on teachers. And that's for a couple of reasons. So firstly, experiential learning is expensive and often requires a lot of infrastructure. And we found that in Singapore, for example, some schools are spending up to $40,000 for things like lab equipment and the lab space. And that is not including upkeep and changes to technology. It's also very time intensive, as you as teachers probably know firsthand. Teachers are incredibly overworked individuals and don't have time to add new experiential learning opportunities or to add new tools to their school syllabus or to the curriculum. And even when experiential learning opportunities are available offline, they're not scalable. You can only fit a certain number of students in a lab at any point in time, for example, and only during school hours. And if you belong to a school that is maybe not as well funded, you might find yourself in a position where you're competing with other teachers for things like lab space. So this is where the use of immersive technologies, VR, and solutions like ours come into play. For example, we've developed a platform that brings experiential learning online to make experiential learning affordable, scalable, and teacher-friendly. And we've designed this platform to be as easy for teachers to use as possible by referencing familiar tools such as slides and PowerPoint, and making sure that your key existing teaching materials are incorporated. Takes three easy steps to use our platform. So firstly, it's just uploading your slides, which we overwhelmingly find to be the backbone of all classes. Then secondly, you drag and drop, adding immersive content from our existing library. These include things like 3D models, 360 simulations, photos for rooms, and interactive quizzes that can be added in between slides and can seamlessly change in between them. And then finally, just run the class, where the tutor side or the teacher's side on the web platform is mirrored directly onto the mobile app that students can have access to anytime, anywhere, making this incredibly suitable for home-based learning. While this is all very good and well-to-do in theory, I think it would be better use of our time actually to see this. So let me know once you guys can see my screen, and you should be able to see the platform that we already have. All right. So if you can see this, this is our platform, and we can take a look at what this looks like in real time. So here's an example of a teacher's account where we've actually uploaded today's presentation in the form of a PDF and have incorporated some examples of the immersive content that I've been describing for different subjects and within the school syllabus. So for example, we've got 3D models. The one that you see here has some animation and annotations as well. This model in particular is trying to showcase the theory of low potential energy versus high potential energy. And you can imagine that this is very good for things like the physics syllabus, right? We also have 3D models that are slightly more realistic for visualization, which is very well suited for concepts like those in biology. Just take some time to take a look at this. And these models are built for the likes of both the older and the younger students alike, and have been adjusted for the audience. So you can see this cell here, the animal cell or the plant cell, that is very good and a big hit amongst younger students. As far as 360 simulations are concerned, 360 simulations allow students to enter them either from their class or from the comfort of their own homes as part of a actual practical, or even as far as part of revision. So this is really great for practicing things like experiments in preparation for exam. The one that you see here is actually built for the chemistry department for actually the O-level syllabus in Singapore. But simulations don't have to just be about actual practice. They can bring students to a life that they would never have been able to see otherwise. And for example, what you have here is a day in the life of a pilot that we've built for actually the Grange Institution. And this is a really great hit for the younger students. As you can see, bright colors and that experience that they would really never have been able to access otherwise. But if you want immersive experiences with a little bit more interaction and actually getting real-time feedback from your students, we also have photosphere rooms with interactive notes and quizzes. So for example, here is a photosphere room that has notes and quizzes on geography, as well as some information on the impact of overfishing on climate change, which is, you can imagine, is really great for environmental studies. So as a whole, you can see that these kinds of content not only take experiences such as lab experiments or field trips online for home-based learning, but also bring visualization to a whole new level. All these examples of our immersive content that I've shown you today are actually just a small portion of a larger library of content that we have access to and that are built for different syllabi and different ages. And we're back to the main presentation here. So as I was mentioning about the larger library, you actually have access to see that library for yourself, as we've actually made today's presentation, slides and all, available for all of you for free. All you'll need to do at the end of the session is to fill in a quick form that we'll share with you at the end of the webinar. And I know that this may be a lot of information right now. Don't you worry. We actually have time where you can catch up with us at the end of the session. Feel free to email us and we'll just set you up so that you can go and use this however you please. All right, now that's enough of us talking about us for today. Let's jump into the main session. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker today, Eugene Lowe. So by way of introduction, Eugene is currently the principal at the Grange Institution in Singapore. The Grange is a new international school under Crestar Education Group. It implements the Cambridge International Curriculum for English, mathematics, and science to complement the International Primary Curriculum, or IPC. Prior to working at the Grange Institution, Eugene was working at a large international school here in Singapore as the deputy principal and curriculum coordinator for the junior sections of the school. Outside his school duties and responsibilities, Eugene represents fieldwork education as an associate trainer and school consultant. So thank you so much, Eugene, for joining us today. We're very, very excited to have you here and to talk to us.
Thank you, Izzy, for the short introduction, and those that visited.
So much. All right. I guess
So,
just to kick things off with the session, I'd like to ask you a few questions that might be burning in the minds of our audience members. And then at the end of the session, we can open up the floor to Q&A. So why don't we just start off by, you telling us a little bit about your journey with the Grange Institution.
all right. Allow me to just briefly talk about the Grange. I mean, you can read all about the Grange on the Grange website itself, which is thegrange.edu.sg. So I'll leave you to discover us for yourself. But in short, this school was, when we set up the school, Cresta wanted the school to be quite different. Different in design, different in size, different in facilities, different in Yeah, almost every sense and almost in a quirky way, if I may say. Um, in terms of our philosophy, one of my pet peeves, and because I do have the good fortune of and a really privilege in the last 15 years or so as an IB trainer, IB consultant, and visiting team leader, etc. And now with field work as well with the IPC and IEYC. Uh, Quite often, I'm sure a lot of you, with every education conference, will talk about it is about the kids and the real world, want to connect them with the real world outside of the classroom. And everyone talks about, all the buzzwords these days, future focused education, etc. But I think at the Grange, if I may modestly say, this is exactly what we want to do. We want to be a school not to be afraid to dream, even though we're quite small in size. But at the same time, we're really, really, or at least I am really, really driven by the fact that it must be about the real world. It must be about the kids. It must be about preparing them for the future. So, so when we embarked on the Grange, we really thought hard about what how do we bring the future and how do we bring the real world into the school. As easy say, especially with a small school like ours, we haven't got the same kind of budget as my last school, who was able to spend thousands and thousands of dollars per child per head throughout every academic year. So what do we do? So one of our philosophy is always where I have my own limitation, where my school has its own limitation, where individual teachers has their limitation, that we are not afraid to go out and find partners to do it for us, do it with us, ideally. So when I chanced upon VERE360, I just couldn't believe it because uh, yeah, I mean, VR is not new. I think neither is Easy and Adila going to pretend that they are the pioneer of VR. It's not, right? We all know that. But I think when I found them, we immediately hit a common ground. Was I could not believe that unlike many other people who were just trying to sell me a subscription, a membership, they humbly came and said, can we help you to create things that are of use to you? So I think uh, I'm mentioning this in a nutshell in my introduction about the Grangers. That's the kind of school that we want, is actually letting our kids see that true collaboration is modeled also by the school and the adults of the school, where even as a principal, I'll be saying, hey, I haven't got the capacity to do that. I need to go and find someone else to help me. Because I think exactly in the real world, in the future real world, for these children, one of the key competence they must have is that ability to be able to go out there and find for themselves some people who can collaborate with them, some people who can support them. So I think, yeah, in a nutshell, Easy, that's kind of the Grange and how we are positioned and our mission about how we bring education to the children. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Eugene. I think that's a really fantastic answer. I think it's one that I'm sure a lot of the audience members can resonate with, especially when you're talking about, preparing students for the real world, teaching them real life skills, hands-on, and I think you're alluding to this kind of entrepreneurial spirit of
Mhm.
really trying things out and not being afraid to dream big, which I think is fantastic and nicely segues into our next question that you're somewhat talking about already, which is, what is your approach to integrating technologies into the school? I think you've spoken a little bit about it in terms of like partnerships and whatnot, but what is your philosophy in integrating technology into the school and immersive technologies into the school?
Mm. I think my definition of technology kind of sit in the middle of a continuum. I think uh, a lot of people think technology, they immediately think it has to be the latest, the shiniest, and the bestest, and the high tech stuff. I think at the school as well, we are also not afraid to think about sometimes almost low tech, but I think the key here is it needs to fit the purpose. Uh, because I have watched in my travel how many teachers turn expensive interactive whiteboards into large butcher sheets of paper. I've watched many people turn the latest iPads and iPad Air and gadgets into nothing but a whiteboard and almost like an erasable marker, right? So I think my philosophy is always it has to befit the purpose. Myself, and I want to apologize to the room full of tech savvy people, is I'm actually not that tech savvy myself. I'm not a tech phobe, but I'm not tech savvy or as much as I would like to be. Therefore, I think I represent a lot of educators and teachers out there who are like me that want something easy, something where I don't need to spend copious amount of time to research or to adapt to, and it hopefully it can kind of adapt to me quickly as well. Of course, adaptability is something that I would expect myself as an educator to do when I want to try something new, right? I think the other thing for me is student agency. You know that I think that's why easy, if I may. One thing that's different about VERE360, which I will say and I'll shout out loud to everyone in the room, is I think that's the difference. Is a lot of people would just say, here, buy our subscription. This is what we can offer. These are the 1,000 things we can offer. But guess what? These are the 1,000 things that they can offer, you know. But sometimes it's a bit like going to the supermarket that offers you 1,000 items. You just need that one item, isn't it? And at that moment in time, it is that one item that matter and not the other 999 on the shelf. So I think the other thing is agency, not just student agency, school agency, and teacher agency, because back to befitting the purpose is allowing customization of content. I think that is key to me when I'm out there as a principal, as a teacher, trying to find appropriate resources to support learning. And I think the other thing as well is it allows for differentiation. It allows for natural differentiation uh, by content, by the way the kids experience it. And in the context of VR is what I love about VR is it allows the child to self-pace. That a child who can speed through it will speed through it, and a child who needs more time can take more time, and a child that needs to come back to it again will come back to it again.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And I think there's a couple of points that I want to touch upon in that answer. In your experiences adopting technology, I'm sure that other people in the audience and other school teachers have tried to bring on technologies, especially now during the pandemic. So, and you have a lot of experience with that and have seen what that looks like from the student's perspective, teacher's perspective, and administrative perspective. So for you, what were some maybe major hurdles or obstacles that you faced in bringing on technology into the school, and how did you at the Grange as well kind of overcome that?
Like I say, I think in the past there were, I mean, as an international school, your teachers come from different places. Everyone's going to tell you that, oh, please buy this. I've experienced this, it was great. And everyone's going to tell you that something familiar to themselves is great. But as a school, as a tiny school, as a modest, small little school, I can't go out there and buy five variation of the same thing. It's just not practical. So I think this is one of the challenges that we're always going to have is find one where everyone likes, where everyone's comfortable with, where everyone at least feel is good enough, right? And I think that goes back to befitting the purpose. Everyone must feel that it is not another thing I have to do, that it is actually just going to complement or supplement what I'm already doing. So I think that will be, in a nutshell, at my school, one of the things that when we first talk about technology and how to use it, this where a lot of teachers like, please don't just buy another thing where I have to spend time to learn about it. Please just make it easy for me. All right, make my life easy. And I think because my heart is always in the classroom, my feet is always on the ground. I am totally empathetic of teachers and where they come from in terms of a busy schedule as well. So that I think will be a hurdle. And the other thing would be probably for a small school, expensive technology, because while there are lots of great things out there, but I think it's I'm just not a school where I can afford millions and millions of dollars in a short amount of time, to spend on that. I may have a million of dollars spread out over a few years, but as an intensified spending, that is almost unrealistic for a school my size. So that I think the cost of technology, the cost of implementation would always be another consideration that every school would have to pay attention to. And then that the other thing which related actually to the last question you asked, which I forgot to mention, is the transferability of when the child goes home. Like, great if technology is great and resources are great, but if they only stay in school, guess what happens? And we have seen many of that happen in this COVID year, isn't it? Those expensive 40,000 laboratories that Easy was talking about decking out, uh, it's not in front of the children when the school shuts down, is it? Right? That's why I think that the transferability of that resource between school, between home, I think that's another challenge. Is finding something that they can continue to access at home, yeah, and still mimic that entirely same experience. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And, I think that these are the challenges that we've spoken about, internally for a while. And I think that's the benefit of having such a long-term partnership, because we've been, as VERE360 and the Grange, we've been able to work with you guys for almost a couple of years now, like coming on to two, really get to know about the teachers,
Has it been two
students.
years already?
I think it's a bit over one. I think we're coming to 1.5, if I'm not
Oh,
wrong. Yeah, it feels a lot
yeah,
quicker.
I guess they say good times fly, so we must be having a good time. Yeah.
Yes, definitely, absolutely.
No, but seriously, it hasn't been 2 years. Yeah, actually.
Almost.
Yeah.
The whole COVID year doesn't count as a year in my head.
Absolutely. You know what? It's gone by in a flash. Yes.
Yeah, it really has. And we've learned so much in that time, which has been
Yeah.
really fantastic. And maybe that could speak to the next question that I'm sure maybe some of the audience members may have, which is, what was actually your experience in bringing immersive technologies into your school, and I guess subsequently working with us?
Am I allowed to tell the truth?
Oh my
Working
goodness.
lying.
Only good things.
If the audience will oblige and indulge me before I go on to tell you what's it like working with and I wouldn't say specifically Easy and Adelia, because they are still backed by a team of other content developer and uh and what I call them VR magicians. In my school, we call them the VR magicians. Um, I think when I first met them, the two ladies in front of me here, and mind you, they didn't pay me to say this. Um, I think they exactly embody. I could not believe that these were two walking example of the kind of people I want my Grange kids to become. This is the kind of kids that I exactly hope someday, you know, will come back and tell me they're successful in the real world because they dare to dream, they dare to take their passion into action. It's one thing to have passion, but not many people allow themselves to take it into action. And that still that humble attitude of, oh, I wonder if you will allow me to, which is so unlike so many times when I'm Googling and calling and someone's like, oh, yep, we provide this. Yep, we serve thousands over school. Take it, leave it, buy it or not, and I felt it was such a refreshing experience to have met them. Okay, so now enough, all right, before the head goes too big and all. Um, Working with them, I think in a few words to summarize it, the experience was really authentic. If authentic is the word, is there wasn't anything airy fairy in this partnership. It was from day one, what do we want? And I think it was authentic because firstly, there was alignment between the vision of really wanting to add value. Um, Within my hard work on both ends. Uh, Kudos to the VERE360 teams. I mean, they make countless visits to the school. They met with teachers, with me individually. They met with individual teachers. They met with teams of teachers. They joined my morning meeting at 8:15 in the morning, which is not easy for a dealer, right? and and yeah, authentic, like there was nothing unreal. And this was a team of people not afraid of hard work. They are very good with timelines. So with every, because for those of you who are in PYP schools or IPC schools or run thematic units like we do at the Grange, you know that within the the inquiry model on the learning process of a unit, you want to time things perfectly, be it a tuning in experience, be it a consolidating experience, be it a field trip or incursion experience, so to speak. You want to time it perfectly to sing with the teacher so that it's like a beautiful dance, isn't it? So I think this is where kudos to the team. They are very responsive, they're very mindful of the deadlines, and I think I have been nothing but very humble and impressed by this partnership and experience. Um, uh, and at the same time, I think the other thing as well is, I think at my age, working with a team of very young people, I think it's also given me a lot of energy. And I think because they truly inspire me despite their younger age compared to me.
No lah.
Call me Uncle Eugene. Uh, I felt every time they were here, they brought so much energy, and I think that is a great experience. And I think the other thing as well, which I encourage you to have a look at the platform. Now, mind you, 2 years back, what am I right? When we first started, the platform wasn't quite ready. It was at beta stage. But
Mhm.
subsequently, when the platform is ready, so you are in a luckier position than we were initially, because back then the platform wasn't quite ready yet. But now I think the platform is, it's, I mean, firstly, let's qualify, it's never going to be a fixed thing, is it? It's perpetually growing, and I think that's the beauty of it.
Mhm.
But I think right now you'll find that when you go and experience the platform, there's a lot. And if you go back to my earlier point about ease, every of my teacher just could not believe it, and they came back and told me, um, it's like PowerPoint. I can do this. It's like PowerPoint. It's so familiar to me. So kudos again to the VERE360 team. Uh, yeah, maybe back to the word authentic. For the teachers, it was nothing fancy. No, I mean, sorry, I should say nothing fancy. VR is pretty fancy, but nothing quite, so out there and scary that they almost feel like they have to write with their left hand all over again. It's very familiar. So drag drop, you can't go wrong. The slides look like a keynote or a PowerPoint slideshow that they can do, whether they are Mac users or PC users. By the way, at the Grange, we use both Mac and PC because, again, it's preparing kids for the real world. Um, and this is why my teachers let down the defenses. I've been a teacher before. When the principal say we're trying something new, you go, what does that mean? Uh, so I think a lot of buy-in from day one because of the ease of the platform. And I think when the key thing is when the faces light up on the children, I think that was the best buy-in with all my colleagues at school. It's, I think every educator has that in them, that it's always about the children. And I think when they saw the faces light up, all right. And then subsequently, as you can see in the background photos, last year we ran a showcase of students' work. So what you see here is the parents are also invited to come in. Um, and the parents actually get to see the kids' own creation on VR. So, mind you, what you're saying is the parents are actually watching content created by the children and a dealer's team. So, this is another thing that I almost feel that is unheard of, that they are actually able to, when you form ongoing partnership with them, that they're able to invest and willing to invest the time to even create it, not just for the teachers, but I mean, it's unrealistic to do it for every project, but at times where suitable, to even take the kid upon as a client and create content for these young clients. And I think when the kids saw the imaginary 3D school in VR form, that's what the kids were. They were blown away. And I think when the parents saw it, they could not believe that the investment was into taking the kids' dreams on paper and transforming not just in 3D form, as a lot of schools would ask them to build models and things like that, or 3D printing, is to take it one step further into the virtual reality environment. And I think these kids, when for the first time, even though they only submitted plans in 2Ds and tried to envision in 3D with clay models or plasticines, it's for them to traverse and rotate their school around, walk through the corridor, look at the window pane from the other side. These were those moments where you see them start touching the air and start spinning around the room. And guess what? The parents did too. So I think after a year, when the teachers let the defenses down and really embrace it, I think last year the great culminating experience was when the teachers saw the expression on the kids' faces, and then on the older kids' faces, their parents. I think everyone's now convinced that this is such value to add to their education. Yeah.
Thanks so much for that, Eugene. I'm very heartened to hear that, this is been such
Did
a
that
great.
sound positive?
Yes, too much positivity. It's positivity everywhere. I love
No,
it.
but I'm not saying that just because you're in the room. Okay, you got to.
Yeah, we're gonna leave now so you guys can hear the real story from Eugene afterwards. Yeah, but no, that was really fantastic, and I think that
They
also
know where to find me. They will ask me. Yeah.
yeah, we will not give them your contact details at the end of this. Yeah, but I think that was a really great overview as well of how we work together and kind of really showed the relationship that we built from meeting you day one, aligning on vision and values, scoping out the entire syllabus. But not only just the content of the syllabus as well. I remember we talked a lot about the pedagogy, the values of the syllabus, and what the underlying values that you're trying to convey to your students through each of the topics that you teach them, and then an iterative process of developing multiple different types of content, whether it be like day in the life of a water droplet going through the water cycle for science, or the imaginary schools that you were talking about, bringing the students paper ideas on into real life. I think that really portrayed a really great and vivid idea of how we work together. I think that's really fantastic. I think as like the last formal question that I'm going to ask you before I open up the floor to the wider audience to do Q&A is, what is one suggestion that you'll have to teachers and schools out there who are interested in incorporating technologies of any sorts, but specifically immersive technologies into their classroom?
I would say it always goes back to knowing why you want to do this. What do you want to get out of this? Because if you don't know what you want to get out of this, you don't know what it's going to look like, is it? Uh, Even though I say I wasn't quite tech savvy, and VR was not something uh, entirely familiar to me as well as a layman of the use of technology, but I had always been very clear what it should look like in terms of in the classroom for the teacher, in terms of how it fits to the different stages of the process of learning, or in an inquiry cycle of a unit, in terms of how it can support language or mathematics or science, be it indoor science or outdoor science. Likewise, it must have a place in visual arts. It must have a place with music. Even right now, we're exploring PE as well, and things like that. Because I'm conscious that the curriculum that we run is a transdisciplinary, it's a multidisciplinary, it's an interdisciplinary curriculum where, again, in the philosophy of mimicking real life, where no one can approach any learning situation or any situation with just a single track discipline. You always need a multidisciplinary view. So therefore, I was very clear from day one that this thing must have those opportunity to connect the different dots, and the dots being the different subject discipline. The other thing that I would say would be my advice is be involved. Don't buy a product and then uh, tell the teachers, well, use as much as you can from it. I think in line with our mission that we will not spend money on anything that doesn't befit our purpose. I think I would like to think that in this 2 years, well, hopefully Easy and Adila's testimonial of their experience working with the Grange is such as we kind of with them take control of what the content would be, so that this content is something that is proprietary and co-created by VERE360 and the Grange. I'm mindful that tech people are not educators sometimes. I mean, I'm lucky that Adila is an educator. Uh, I know that Easy is very passionate about education, but quite often, if you're approaching another team, the tech people may not be educator, but this is where we need to play the role of the educator to be very familiar with our content, to be very familiar to find those connections for VR in our content. And I'm sure in the room right now, many of you are way more tech savvy than I am, and you are in an even better position to find those opportunities that I may not even see because I'm not as tech savvy as some of you. So I think in a nutshell, these are the things you need to think about to make it your own. Think about to add value to the education that you want to provide, but more importantly, keep it authentic, keep it something that you can manage. Yeah, I think in a nutshell that would be my advice. Yeah, be very specific and know what you want. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Eugene. Those are really insightful pieces of advice, and I hope that this is helpful to the audience members. And I think with that, I'd like to open up the floor to any questions that people may have for Eugene. And I'd also like to invite Adila Saeed to join us in the panel to help answer any questions that you might have for us as VERE360. Yeah, and also feel free to write your questions in the chat if you are not in a position to really speak and ask your question that way. Okay, I guess I'll just read out this question that we have from Dill. Thank you so much for your question. It's for Eugene, and it says, what you said really resonates with me. Spend money only on things that will benefit the students directly. Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I think that was a really great point, and it's something that is people implicitly kind of understand, but to say it explicitly and to have it at your front of mind, it was worth saying. Thank you. Yeah, and again, please feel free to ask questions, chime in. No need to raise hand or anything.
Hi, my name is.
Please. Yeah, thank
Hello?
you. Yeah.
So sorry, yeah?
That's okay. My name is Rob Newbury. I'm the Dean of Students at Chatsworth International School. I have a question around some of you. Thank you, Eugene. Thank you, first of all. I have a question around something you were saying earlier about home and using the tools that using the tools and taking them home and making it a bit more authentic. Can somebody, maybe, I'm not sure if it's somebody from the team or maybe you, talk about what that looks like in terms of the VR experience? Not everybody's going to have access to the same kind of hardware at home. So are you talking about the software that the kids will be using at home and the VR experience, something that they experience at school, or what does that look like?
Can I leave the tech people to go first and then the educator will go? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So maybe thanks so much for your question, Rob. I think that was a really great question. I think this whole conversation of authenticity is really fantastic. So from our side, at least with VERE360, I'm going to pick up on maybe a couple of points that you were talking about. One is about access, in terms of the hardware. I think that was a really big one. And then the second one would be about the actual software and the design of it itself and how we make that also authentic. So to the first point about hardware, we completely understand that not everybody has access to the same kind of hardware, and that's kind of one level of inequality that exists in our world. And for us, VERE360, when we first started out this company, we had our vision of 100% access to high quality educational tools and content for the Southeast Asia region. which is a region that always gets overlooked, is always seen as a place where you can copy paste the solutions from elsewhere in the world, hoping that it works out. It doesn't usually do so. So for us, what we've done is that we build everything so that it is suited for all different types of technology at different scales and different levels. So whether that be your phone itself, because in places like in the Philippines or Indonesia, where there's a high penetration rate of smartphone usage, and most people are on their phones already, but maybe don't have a laptop, that's very suitable. In places like Singapore, we also try to offer things for tablets of different levels, as well as PCs. This is not only because Singapore is doing the whole one-to-one system in personal devices as pushed out by MOE now, but also because some teachers are slightly older. They can't physically be in the VR experience with their students. They sometimes feel vertigo. So there's also kind of differences in people's, I guess, temperance for VR technology. And so we try to cater for all of it and everything. So I hope that adequately addresses the hardware side. And then on the software side, for us, we try to be as authentic as possible in the design of everything that we do. And that's why partnerships with like great schools like the Grange Institution are super important to us. So for things like every project that we do, big projects, we work with the teachers, we go down weekly, daily, however often you need us, we will sit down, we will go to your class, talk to your students, talk to your teachers, be a teacher for a day kind of thing, to really know what that experience is like and integrate that into the design so that it's so easy that anybody from grade 1 all the way to a parent can use it. And that is for the projects, but it also speaks to the platform that we have, which is, as Eugene was saying, looks a lot like PowerPoint, Keynote, something that teachers are very familiar with, because we understand that now with COVID, teachers have been now inundated with technology, and it can be very stressful, it can be very overwhelming, and all the more so if you were not in this generation that grew up with technology. So building for the most basic tools and making sure to incorporate existing tools, like if you have a PowerPoint presentation, that should be able to upload to your platform, upload to our platform as well. So I hope that also kind of answers all your questions about authenticity and access.
And Rob, just to add to that, I think one of the things that now obviously we didn't plan it because we didn't anticipate COVID, but we were so lucky that all these things happened, and just before COVID hit and home-based learning, we were just about that turning point where teachers were starting to embrace it. Kids already had one or two experiences with it in different pockets of classes in different subject areas, and it is true that a school like the Grange, our children are fortunate enough whose family can have what we call basic devices to support learning at home. But it is also challenging for parents because many of our parents may have three children during the home-based learning time. And I'm sure at Chatsworth, you will face that same issue with parents saying, I can't handle three lessons at the same time. But this is where we find that having VR to go on something as common as a phone or an iPod. And as at this school, we have invested a lot of money into iPods. And of course, when I first invested in iPods, my teachers were like, seriously, Eugene, iPod? Everyone's like over iPod now. But guess what? When that hit, we found ourselves in a unique position where a kid doesn't have a personal phone. It could be substituted by an iPod that we could still let them take home. Uh, Not be afraid that they're going to damage $1,000 machine, because that's not how much they cost. And literally none of the expensive hundreds of dollars VR goggles or things like that. I mean, we defaulted to cardboard goggles and things like that. And they were, in COVID time, they really serve us very well because they were easily replaceable. They could be frequently replaced for hygiene reasons and COVID reasons as well. So I think everything kind of worked coincidentally, if I may call, in our favor at the Grange this COVID year. And I think that's why our parents also realized the potential of of VR in a time like this where um, no criticism, and I don't want to sound like uh, like I'm criticizing anyone at all, is that while a lot of schools were unfortunately stuck with just online e-platforms of subscription, online subscription, e-books, e-worksheets, that we were at least able to provide a bit more, if that makes sense. Yeah, does that kind of answer your question, Rob? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it does. I think I'm missing something. I think I'm missing the VR connection. I hear what you're talking about with the, with the tools and the iPods and the cardboard kind of experience. That's typically we've seen it with Google Cardboard and things. I think I'm missing something in terms of how that translates to a VR experience, though. But that's okay. I'll let other people ask their questions, and I'll just keep listening for now.
No worries, that's totally fine. And also, if you have, need to clarify this is probably something that other people are also thinking too. So maybe we can, we don't mind spending some time trying to address that. So Rob, maybe you can explain to us, what you think when we talk about like the VR aspect, and maybe we can address any gaps in understanding there.
Sure. Maybe it would be better if you explain what your understanding of the VR experience is.
Okay, sure.
That's probably better, I think.
Okay, sure, no problem. So for us, when we work with VR experiences, and maybe what would be most helpful is to describe the process by which we work with schools, what kind of VR we provide, and how we provide that. Yeah. So when we work with schools like the Grange, for example, as Eugene was mentioning in his Q&A session, which is that we will sit down, we'll figure out what is the entire syllabus and where does experiential learning best fit in. And for like syllabi like the IPC, that's pretty straightforward because there's a lot of experiential learning in there. We also do a lot of work with IPC, IB, International Baccalaureate, and MOE, of course. We'll identify those places, we'll work together to develop content, and that content will be in the form of VR. So for us, we develop a lot of mobile VR. So maybe that can help explain as well, is that things that you see with for the Google Cardboards, those are considered also VR, but just within the spectrum. So there are usually typically 3 levels of VR that we like to explain. So there's first the level of just simple 360 experience, very passive. You'll see this with things like Google Expeditions. Even in YouTube, there's that 360 mode, or in Facebook, you might see nowadays, there's also 360 photos that you might see. So that's the first level. The second level that we also provide is simple interactivity with functions like gaze or simple tapping that is accessible through Cardboard. So all that allows students to do is to interact with the world through a very set form of interactions. So that's level 2. And then a level 3, of course, is that higher VR that we see in the world, that for the likes of Oculus Rift, that is typically associated with like the gaming world, where students are able to interact, but there's permutations of the results. And so we cater for all 3. And then we found that mostly the first 2 are the best for younger students, but also just for K-12, and also is the most accessible for schools to develop and launch to their entire schools en masse. So hopefully that answers your questions, but yeah, of course, please feel free to ask any follow-up questions.
No, that's great. That explains it really well. I'm guessing your software is web-based?
So we develop on both web-based as well as on game engines as well.
Okay, and so for the higher level, for the level 3 that you're talking about, is that a different kind of, is that different software, or that's the current software that you've got going? It's just a different application of it.
So those level 3 types of hardwares would use games, and I guess simulations would be typically developed on game engines themselves. There's a lot of them out there, like Unreal, Unity, for example.
Unity,
yeah. And it would be launched as an app, and then put into things like your Oculus headsets if you already have them.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Hey, thanks for the questions. Hopefully that also is helpful for other people too. I'm just going to quickly check the chat too, see if there are any questions there. And of course, feel free to answer any questions now. There's also our email that you can email at the end if something comes to your mind later. Okay, yeah, Dell, thank you again for your question. So level 3 technologies, Oculus, for example, like Oculus Rift, may cost a lot, high costs. is benefits a small group of students, and I think that's totally fine. And any comments to that? I guess I'll just start off. And of course, Eugene, from a teacher side, it would be very interesting to hear as to why or why not you should purchase like high-tech headwear. So for us, we definitely see that hardware like Oculus Rifts, those VR headsets are very expensive, which is why we don't exclusively develop for that. And it's actually a very small portion of our development. And it's usually built for polytechnics or tertiary level education, because at that level, there's usually like a higher need for specificity. But we realize that the majority of people in Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, etc., throughout the region can't afford that. They also don't necessarily have the internet connection or any other infrastructure required to support such kinds of headsets. So there are pros and cons, but typically for education, we like to stick with levels 1 and 2.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I mean, from a simplistic, low-tech person's speech, so to speak, I think another parallel example would be a lot of schools invest in very expensive digital microscopes, for example, for their science lesson around biology. So at this school, it's not realistic for me, because if each piece is going to cost me $700 to $800, to exactly with Dell's comment, to deck it out for a class of 20 students, it's going to be a cost, and then you have to weigh how often is it going to be used, and especially in COVID times, with parents being nervous about where kids have to use equipment that touches their eyes, their face, or parts of the body, or multiple people sharing it as well. So this is where I think VERE360 and us have developed a lot of science-based, because one of the things that the IPC is quite different from PYP is there are a lot of great science-based thematic units that naturally lend itself to a lot of exploring things uh, at beyond the surface level. So yes, one option would be invest in very expensive microscopes, and then the other option is true proprietary VR content to actually be able to create some of these things where, be it for year one students, as simple as Easy said, too much tech at such it may be a little bit overwhelming and they feel lost in that space, that it's at the entry level as simple as a 360 experience or a tab and pull apart and put together kind of puzzle thing, to a little bit more sophistication where they can actually go from one layer into another layer or zoom in and out to get different view and rotation, etc. So I think exactly true. I mean, I am so against expensive items that only one person can use each time. Well, if you have the deepest pocket in the world, sure, go for it, but I don't. And well, if you do, let me know and I will come steal some of yours. But yeah, so totally. I think it's about clever spending, but yet ensuring every child has a fair go at it. And I'm of a firm believer that no child should be left out. Oh, that's going to sound like Americans, but no child is going to be left out just because they can't afford an expensive technology. Because I have seen a lot of great teaching happen in low tech environment as well. So I know it's going to contradict this seminar because we're talking about VR, and VR is fairly high tech in its sense. But I think the kind of VR that we are also proposing is not crazy expensive, very, very exclusive, and that no one can actually come near them. And I think the Grange is an excellent example where even for a school of our size and our budget, that we're able to make it available to every student in every level at school and both at home if the parents choose to partake in it as well. Affordable technology, definitely.
Yeah, if I could add on as well, right? Thank you so much, Eugene, for that. I think, as Viewer 360, we always want to talk to teachers and develop something. And in that process, I think we like to look at the problem that we are really trying to solve. So a lot of times, for polytechnics or like high schools, you look at lab simulations. So those will require, like gamified content. But a lot of times we also see teachers who just want to bring their students on a
Yeah.
field trip and immerse them in an environment. So that's less gamified and more immersive content. A lot of other times teachers just want to see what's inside your skull or what's inside, different parts of your bodies. So that requires, more usage of better like 3D modeling technologies. So I think, in that aspect, we always like to look at the topics and what the teachers are trying to solve, and then create a content that will actually, help with the learning goals.
And I think this is a great kind of note to end on, this idea of, having options and building for all levels that are available, and as well as being adaptable, because, we are sure that all schools are going to be evolving with your technology, and we're here to evolve and work with you on that. So I think that's a really nice note to end on. But before everyone leaves, I'm conscious of time. Your time is very precious. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to be here today. I hope that everyone got something out of this. And before you leave, of course, remember always to scan the QR codes here to follow us, continue to learn about immersive technologies. We will be holding more webinars like this in the future if you want to learn more. And as promised, today's goodie bag, the student account, you can gain access to that by scanning this QR code. This will also provide us a way to get your feedback so that we can make better, bigger, more amazing webinars in the future. So thank you so much for your time, everybody, and hope to see you in the future too.
Take care, everyone.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you
Please
very
hold
much.
it
Thank
down.
Stay
you.
COVID
Thank you so much.
safe. All
Yeah,
right.
keep safe, everyone. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for everybody. If you are here to ask questions, please feel free. We can have larger discussions. If not, we can always move this conversation to another meeting, either face-to-face, over a call. You can have our email. I will just go back to that slide. Else, I will just be ending the meeting then, yeah? Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Hi, Izzy. Sorry, can you stay
sorry,
back for
sorry.
like 5 minutes?
Yeah, no worries. Sure. Let's go for it. Yeah. Hi.
Hi, Izzy. Hi, Adila.
Hello. Hi.
Hey, yeah, so this is Mr. Zalihan.
Yeah.
Hi, Mr. Zoya. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, while the webinar was going on, me and him were like thinking about our experience so far with the trial account that we provided.
Mhm.
We just have a couple of questions which I thought maybe you can shed more light on it. Okay,
Can.
first question is the assets that, let's say if we collaborate to make assets together, where do these assets reside exactly?
Hmm.
With you on your server or somewhere else?
Yeah. So